Welcome to the Slow Down to Go Faster podcast, living and leading intentionally. I'm back here with my lovely wife, Maggie. We're going to talk about some of the other content in the book that Rennie and I put together. And today we're going to dive into the mindsets of a transformational leader.
I'm still thinking about the lovely part.
Oh, well, good. You can see, you can stay with that mindset.
We can quit right there.
Beautiful. Well, we see what we seek, and that's part of what we're talking about when we talk about these mindsets.
Transformational mindset. What are we transforming from? What are we transforming to?
Well, I think it will depend on the mindsets, but transformation, if we break that word down, means to change form. And it reminds me of one of my favorite quotes from Emerson, who I think is one of Rennie's favorite authors, that the ancestor to every action is a thought. And so when we think about these mindsets, there are our thinking, we could call them paradigms, our attitudes. But if you're looking to make change within yourself, your organizations, or your teams, it starts with these four mindsets, which are... because I know you were on the edge of your chair.
I was just going to ask, but certainly, please tell me now.
First one is possibility. Second one is growth. Third one is curiosity. And the fourth is responsibility.
All right, so these are all mindsets. So a possibility mindset, a growth mindset, these are all separate. Can they be combined? Do they overlap?
Well, we think that a transformational leader has all four of these mindsets. And so we should talk about them probably separately and talk about what impact they can have on the transformational process.
All right, start with the first one.
So possibility. One of the things in my coaching and in my leadership consulting, I've noticed is most people don't think too big. They think too small. And so the possibility mindset is really getting people to think much bigger about their potential and the impact they can have on the organizations they serve.
All right, I have a question for you. Do you find that is more prevalent among women leaders than men leaders?
Thinking big?
No, not thinking big.
I don't know if I can make that distinction. I think the distinction I'll make is that I think it's prevalent among most of the leaders that we coach, that I don't think they tap into their imagination enough. Part of what we do in coaching is to get people to imagine something different in their future, and also to imagine something even bigger than they have thought of previously. So I don't see a connection necessarily gender-based, but I do see the opportunity to widen the aperture on what's possible for almost all people that we interact with. Yeah.
I just wondered that because women in general, or at least generations past, have very often made themselves smaller.
Well, it's a way to leak power. Thinking smaller is a way to leak your power. It's certainly a way not to step further into your full potential. And so that's why I love that, there's a saying in neurolinguistics programming, possible in the world, possible for me. And so it doesn't leave anything out, and it gets people hopefully inspired to take action, take steps towards the things that they dream about.
Okay. What's the second one?
Well, before we go to the second one, I think the other thing is, think about people that have achieved or have done something that you've liked to do. That's what really creates that opportunity of possibility. And the question I like to ask everybody, because nobody knows who I'm talking about when I ask them, is, who is your Roger Bannister?
All right, I'll bite.
Yeah. And so Roger Bannister, sports trivia, remember we talked about that's my specialty, was the first person to break the 4-minute mile barrier. And he did it in 1954. And he did it at a time, he was in medical school, when most of his professors and his coaches thought it was physically impossible. And so we really want to break that barrier. And one of the things, when we create possibility thinking, we get people to start to think bigger. And one of the ways to think bigger is start to hang around with people, read biographies about people who have done bigger things in their lives. And I think that's really one of the really fun things about coaching and about leadership development is you get people to tap into their imagination, to think bigger, and then they have a bigger impact.
Okay. That makes sense.
I hope so.
No, it does. It made me think of when I was younger and wanting to write, wanting to be a columnist specifically. And I would read Irma Bombeck. I mean, she was my Roger. She was my
Bannister.
Roger.
Okay.
And that had a tremendous impact on me, that there was a woman out there writing about life and making it funny and relatable and not making us feel bad about it, about, women specifically, but people in general. This is life, and it's messy, and that's okay. And she was one of the first people I read that I remember thinking, okay, this is doable. People want this. They want to read this. And, if I can get better, then I can do that.
That's a perfect example. And it actually leads into the second mindset of a transformational leader, which is the growth mindset. And this is a mindset that's focused on learning and improving and getting better. And it's contrasted with the perfectionist mindset or the fixed mindset, where you're born with certain gifts, certain IQ, and it's finite, it's fixed. And we know through the study of the brain, neuroplasticity, that that's not true. And when you combine the growth mindset, which means we're going to learn by failing or we're going to learn through the mistakes we make, we're more inclined to stay in action. We're more inclined to try things that we were oftentimes afraid to try. And the key part of this is that your identity is not tied up in the outcome. You're just learning in the process. I think we quote Mandela somewhere in the book. Mandela is known for saying, I either win or learn. So the worst thing you can do when you take a chance, when you're courageous enough to step through your fear, is that you'll learn something. And so if you're going to change anything, you first need to change yourself, and you need to be willing to step, without the net. Step and have the faith that the net will appear.
And part of that is not tying your identity to the outcome, because if the outcome is not what you wanted, you're still you.
Absolutely.
You're still okay.
Absolutely.
That's a tough one.
It's a tough one, but I think part of what we need to look at is don't be so attached and don't be so specific to the outcome. Be open to this or something better. And one of the things we've been playing around with in our practice is this idea of open to everything, attached to nothing, knowledgeable in something. And you don't want to be too attached to any specific outcome. Think big, dream big, go after it, but be open. You may actually find something better along the way.
Can I tell an attached to the outcome story?
You can, sure.
As you know, I have a profound love of wildlife, profound desire to see bears in the wild. Anytime I see a deer, even though there's millions of them here, I still get excited. I see a hawk, I see an owl. But I've always wanted to see a bear in the wild. And we were visiting my brother for Thanksgiving in the Catskills. And my parents got there before we did, or after we did, and they got, literally 5 minutes after we did. They pull in, and my mom got out of the car so excited. And she goes, you're not going to believe this. We just had 2 baby bears pass right in front of us. And I was like, are you kidding me with that? Everybody in my life has seen a bear in the wild, and I am way too attached to that outcome.
No question. No question. So
thank you. That was helpful.
Release your grip a little bit.
I just...
And know that it's possible. Possible in the world, possible for you. If it happened to other people.
My mom didn't even want to see a bear.
Well, you know that I see a lot of things.
I know. You are the one. You're driving and you see the stuff. I'm glued out the window and you're still pointing it out to me. So yes, I know I have a problem with that.
No, an opportunity.
I know I have an opportunity with that.
I think there's a lesson there. But it leads to the third mindset, which is curiosity. And I think curiosity, we talked a little bit about imagination, but I love this one, and I love the image that we use in some of our trainings, like a little 4-year-old girl with these round glasses. This is channeling your inner 4-year-old. This is tapping into the imagination. I think you see the linkage back to possibility. One of the things that I think we lose touch with, we don't lose, we lose touch with our imagination, our curiosity as we go older. We get really serious. Everything, we take ourselves way, way too seriously, and we miss out on the fun. We miss out on just doing it for doing its sake. And I think particularly with the pace of change and the complexity of change today in our world, we really need to be more curious about what could be better about it. And so that's the third of 4 of the mindsets of a transformational leader. And I'll come back to this. All change starts with us first, then the relationships we're in, our teams, our organizations, and our communities.
We have gone back to coloring as adults. We, my daughter and I
still am a little uptight about that. But
your daughter and I, people
yeah.
have gone back to coloring as a way to recenter. And I mean, with markers, with crayons, with colored pencils, there are coloring books for adults. And a lot of it is geared toward anxiety sometimes, or ways to break out of mental stagnation or mental health issues. But a lot of it is, I believe, to go back to being 4, to coloring. And if you were just given a blank piece of paper, if I were given a blank piece of paper and said, draw a picture, I wouldn't know what to draw. But give me a coloring book with a flower, and I'm all over it. And I am enjoying coloring again.
Well, you wouldn't know what to draw because you would tell yourself you're not a good drawer.
Well, I'm not a good drawer, but I'm a good colorer.
But doesn't mean you're not artistic, doesn't mean you're not creative, and it's probably a belief that was handed to you early on. And so one of the lines, it was one of Bill's clients, talked about whenever he gets stuck. So think about what we're talking about, transformation, changing form, taking action. He would say, what would my 6-year-old self do? And I think we need to equip people with more questions to not only ask that question, but to actually go back in time to see yourself there. I mean, people would just do stuff, and they weren't like thinking about what will others think. I mean, could you imagine some 6-year-old kid wondering if they're going to get canceled, for God's sake? It doesn't even come up because it's just, let's just do this to do it. And I think we just put way too much pressure on ourselves. So I think curiosity brings us back to a time when we were more imaginative, more innocent, and when we believed that we could change just about anything.
We do that as parents, I think. I don't think I'm the only one who does this, but when our kids were growing up, even today, even as adults, when they come to me with questions or when there's an issue, I very often find myself thinking, all right, how would my parents have handled this, and how would I have liked them to handle this? I handle it then through that lens of what would have worked better, or did it work, and can I do it that way?
So I want to say this nicely, but in the profession I'm in executive coaching, we're undoing a lot of the stuff that well-intended parents and teachers and friends and family did along the way, because people start to unconsciously have these limiting beliefs that get in the way of them stepping into their full potential, their innate greatness. And so the last mindset is responsibility. You're still pulling your own wagon. You've got agency to make different choices. And so transformational leaders need to realize they're perfectly where they need to be. And if they want to be somewhere else, they've got to grab the handle of that red wagon, and they got to pull it up hills and downhill and wherever. And so that personal responsibility. A lot of this is around awareness. Simple awareness is the seed of responsibility. If we don't like where we are, where our team is, where our organization is, we can change it. We can transform it. But we need to be open to thinking bigger. We need to be open to learning through our mistakes. We need to be more curious and imaginative and we need to accept that we own it, and it's our responsibility.
One of the best lines that I have picked up from you over the last 30 years, in addition to, are you going to learn to cook?
So that was a question.
That was a question, yeah. Nothing changes if nothing changes. I love that. Nothing changes if nothing changes.
Something's got to move. Something's got to move.
Somebody's got to pull that wagon.
I think the last part that I'd like our listeners to think about is that we want to make sure that we don't want to let our beliefs get brittle before our bones. And so these 4 mindsets are really intended to keep us flexible and loose and lubricated. It's never too late to start. And every day is a new beginning.